Good afternoon and welcome to the City Club of Cleveland. I'm Hugh McKay, President of the Board of Directors of the City Club. Thanks to the generous support of longtime City Club members Stanley and Hope Adelstein, the City Club has awarded 20 students prizes for their participation in the Hope S. and Stanley R. Adelstein Free Speech Essay Contest. Nearly 600 students from over 60 Northeast Ohio schools submitted essays. Now we will hear from the first place winner, Tori Hitchinson. Tori?
Hello, I'm Tori, and it's very nice to be here. Talking about the merits of freedom of speech is like trying to hold a discussion concerning the importance of eating every day. They are so ingrained in my life, thoughts about them are hard to verbalize. Give me one day during which I cannot read the books that I enjoy reading. For 24 hours, make it so that one wrong word can cost me everything. Take away my ability to stand up for what I believe in, tap my phone lines, read my emails, hold a knife to my throat, and ask me if I believe in God. Watch me stage a protest and then kill my peers with tanks. Block any websites that may give me hope for a better tomorrow. Burn the words I write. Silence everything that I may say. Destroy the part of me that makes me human. Then I may have the right to tell you what freedom of speech means. Thank you.
Great job, Tori, and congratulations. Today's other longer speaker, hopefully, is Marino, who, in describing the challenges faced by many nonprofit and human service organizations, with a tip of the hat to Yogi Berra, says that many of these organizations are, quote, lost but making good time. Mr. Morino's career spans more than 40 years as an entrepreneur, technologist, civic and business leader, and ultimately as a leader in philanthropy. A graduate of Case Western Reserve University, in the early 70s, Mr. Marino co-founded and helped build the Legent Corporation, a software and services firm that became a market leader and one of the industry's 10 largest firms by the early 1990s. He retired from the private sector in 1992, and since then, Mr. Marino's focus has been in the nonprofit sector. He's become a leading force in rethinking traditional models and assumptions in philanthropy for nonprofits and funders as well. Mr. Marino founded the Marino Institute in 1994, and in the 1990s, his efforts focused on the application of the internet in communities, and in particular, opening up new technology-enabled learning opportunities and centers for low-income youth. In 2000, Mr. Marino co-founded Venture Philanthropy Partners, focused on investment of money, expertise, and contacts to improve the lives and opportunities of the underprivileged. While Mr. Marino's accomplishments in the world of technology are remarkable, he stresses that ultimately great social change is made not by technology, but by people. Mr. Marino serves as a trustee of Case Western Reserve University, his alma mater, the Cleveland Clinic, the Lawrence School, St. Joseph Academy, Brookings Institution, the Community Foundation for the National Capital Region, and others. Mr. Marino's honors and awards are truly too numerous to mention, but include Washingtonian Magazine's Washingtonian of the Year, American Academy of Achievement's Golden Plate Award, Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year Award, KPMG High Tech Entrepreneur of the Year, and so on. He's published widely, including his influential book, Leap of Reason. Please welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, Mario Morino.
Thank you for your generous introduction and for giving me the opportunity to speak here at the City Club in its 100th anniversary year and allowing me to talk about something I care about deeply. Helping great leaders have greater impact on our social challenges here in Northeast Ohio and all over our nation. I want to thank those of you who are here today and those who have tuned in, but I especially want to first offer my congratulations to the students, Victoria, Colleen, William, and the 17 other finalists. You've done a great job. Thank you very much. It was good. Yeah. I've got to tell you, this is a big deal for a kid, an Italian kid who grew up on 93rd and Harvard, to be standing here at the Distinguished City Club. When I was growing up in the 50s, the City Club was only 5 miles from our home. But for all practical purposes, it was in a different universe. My dad sold vacuum sweepers door to door and drove a cab. My mom cleaned offices. I'm sure they're looking down right now from the heavens trying to figure out what is going on with the son standing here right now. In fact, I can actually see my mom with her apron on, and her wooden spoon she used to make sauce, nervously whispering to me, Mariucci, Mariucci, please don't screw up in front of all these important people. So, Mom, I'll try not to screw up. Looking back on it, there was no question we were poor. We just didn't know it. My mom was the rock. She, in addition to cleaning offices, she cleaned people's homes, she took in laundry, and she kept our family afloat. She made sure my brother, my sister, and I, oftentimes friends, cousins, whoever was around, were fed, clothed, and certainly loved. And we had great places to go, or at least we thought so. The Miles Park Library, the then new YMCA on 113th and Miles, the Polish Women's Hall, Salvation Army on 93rd Street, and all kind of places to play ball and hang out. I went to South High, and we had our share of committed teachers, and we had good, demanding coaches, believe me. Our church was Holy Name, down on Harvard and Broadway. The priests and nuns there managed to keep a lot of us straight, especially with ways they would smack you on Monday night catechism. And what you got to do is, if those of you are old enough to picture the movie The Blues Brothers, picture Jake and Elwood in the orphanage with the nun hitting with the ruler, and that was Monday night catechism at Holy Name. You know. When I drive through my old neighborhood today, it's a completely different story. Holy Name and the YMCA are still there. And fortunately, there's this oasis that's been built on North Broadway, really anchored up and unsaid by the Stefanski family, in Third Federal, in Central Catholic, in the new Boys and Girls Club. And it's wonderful. But so many elements of the connected and supported community that I knew, that gave me that opportunity, have been broken by the lost manufacturing jobs that has gone on for decades in this community, and has given way to vacant buildings and empty lots and shattered dreams. A kid growing up on my old street, a kid born with the intelligence, drive, and caring parent, doesn't have nearly the chance I had when I grew up. Based on current statistics, that young boy or girl probably has less than a 5% chance of graduating from college. Do we really understand what that means for our community and nation to let that take place? I know there are many good reasons for optimism in this community, because we have leaders here and listening in and all around who are willing to walk through walls and work around the clock for the children and families in this community. But I want to lay down a challenge to everyone here and everyone listening, that whether you're a nonprofit leader, public servant, business leader, civically engaged, donor, engaged citizen, or Joe Blow Schmo, the challenge for all of us is to determine with rigor whether our hard work is adding up to the kind of opportunity that I had, the kind of opportunity that many of you had, and the kind of opportunity that every parent wants for his or her child. Isn't that what this is all about, our future? As I see it, the whole system sets nonprofits up for struggle and starvation, not for solving challenges. We funders, board members, and civic leaders should be supporting nonprofit leaders to build strong, high-performance organizations. Instead, we cause them to think incrementally, month to month, and hand to mouth. Think about that. We're trying to solve problems, yet we do cause them to be incremental, function month to month, and hand to mouth. We say we're focused on results. But what we're really doing is we're imposing our agendas on nonprofit leaders and putting huge demands for information on results, yet we don't want to take the time to listen to what these leaders need to do their job and produce the results we want. Pat Lawler is a stunning nonprofit executive in Memphis, Tennessee, that I've had the pleasure to meet last year. He runs an organization called Youth Villages. It helps emotionally troubled children, actually adolescents, many of which have bounced from foster home to foster home, become successful adults. Pat's results are absolutely amazing. 82% of the kids in youth village programs across this country are rising above their heart-wrenching challenges. They are finishing school, earning a living, and contributing to their communities. That's nearly twice the rate of comparable programs. If that's not eye-opening enough, Pat's programs cost 1/3 of similar programs. Twice the outcomes, 1/3 the cost. And yet Pat reports that he's lost more government contracts and had to lay off more people in the past 6 months than his previous 32 years. Seeing cuts made to an organization that does what works and is high performance kills me, and it should tear at everybody in our society. Because there are few that, in fact, are working that way. Our crazy funding system is at the heart of this issue, but it is just part of the equation. In too many of the interactions I have with nonprofits and government agencies, I see signs they aren't taking a hard look in the mirror. They aren't necessarily focused on the right things. Or are they focused on measuring the right things? And are they focused on doing the right things? Are asking the hard questions about themselves? Far too many settle for mediocrity. And the cost is the kids' lives. And some even cause harm. I've witnessed this in my work. We see it day to day in what we do. But I've also seen it personally with family and friends. In the final weeks of the life of one of my aging cousins, he was in a hospital here in the region. And 2 nights in a row, the hospital called our family to come in to take care of him because they couldn't. This is 2011 this happened in. It was unreal. It was surreal that this happened. What do you think about that if that was your cousin? In another instance, the academic and development of the academic and social development of an extended family member was set back several years by a school that had worthy intentions but did not have the competencies or capabilities to meet this young person's needs, yet they would not admit it. These effectiveness challenges are not new, but they are growing in urgency. At Venture Philanthropy Partners, we're seeing that nonprofit leaders are being forced to navigate and manage a huge supply-side problem and a huge demand-side problem at the same time. And this is going to mean big, hairy challenges for all nonprofits and public sector agencies, especially those that are not on track to deliver high-quality services at a cost-effective price point. No matter who wins the election this year, the federal government will have to make increasingly hard decisions on what it can and cannot fund. Here in Ohio and around the country, state and local governments are starving. And this will only get worse when the federal government really begins to cut back. After all, 1/4 of our state funding and 1/3 of all local government funding comes from the feds. In this era of scarcity, everything is on the table. In the words of New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, and I quote, "Towns and counties are starting to have to make the real choices. Fewer cops, fewer firefighters, slower ambulance response, and yes, fewer teachers in front of our classrooms." Even if you're not funded with government money, please don't assume these cuts don't affect you. The competition for foundation grants, major gifts, fee-based contracts will skyrocket when funding for these organizations are cut and they turn to other funding sources like yours. Brian Law, a senior staffer at the Texas legislature, said it bluntly at a nonprofit conference last month. Your survival is on the line. On the demand side, seismic shifts in our society, from the aging of our population to dramatic shifts in the nature of our workforce, are expanding the need for services, and not only among the poor, but among major sectors of our population. I don't have enough time here to do justice to those shifts. I will offer you, though, just a few sobering points on why I believe the need for services is going to increase dramatically in the coming years. The economist Alan Blinder, a former vice chairman of the Federal Reserve, estimates that a quarter or more of all U.S. jobs could be moved overseas in the next several decades. This is on top of everything we've incurred. Global competition is just one factor in this changing nature of the American workforce. Technology is another. Automation is coming to all parts of our economy, even the service economy that has really been impervious to globalization and technology to date. This is wild. Last year, Slate magazine featured a story about a startup that the product would replace waiters with a souped-up iPad. Let me read about it. The device called Presto, which, you put your iPad, it lets you order, okay, do your Wi-Fi sends the order right to the kitchen, comes back and tells you when your food's going to be ready. Now, take that simple transaction I just went through, in seeing a waiter now lose a job, a waitress, and apply it to thousands of jobs in our nation, and how it will change the process. As these trends continue to pick up steam, we're going to see a dramatic increase in the number of people who are displaced, and therefore the number of lives that will be disrupted. And even as these people try to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and many of them will, they will have to turn to the social sector and the public sector for support. A sociologist noted in a recent Plain Dealer cover story, he was trying to explain the severity of this issue for the Gen X and Gen Y and millennial generations. And here's his quote. We're going through this huge fundamental change. We thought we would have our parents' lives. Then came this earthquake that many people still don't see. Our society will have less money for services, and we'll have more demand for services for a broader swath of our population. Just imagine how hard the funding decisions are going to become. What will we fund, what will we cut, and what will we drop? And how will we make that decision? So the social sector is in for a big jolt in the coming years. In like manner, so is the public sector. And we can respond by infighting, robbing Peter to pay Paul, and continuing our efforts to be incremental improvement. Or we can respond with much greater impact, at a lower cost for those we serve. If we choose the path of greater impact, and I hope to God we do for all of our sakes, our primary agent of change is going to be the courageous nonprofit and public sector leaders who are willing to learn, adapt, grow, and change. You see, I'm a huge believer that what happens because people make things happen. Great people. And here in Northwest Ohio, we have some incredibly gifted leaders, some here today, relentlessly pursuing high performance. And I'd like to highlight two that I've had the chance of working with fairly closely in the last several years. The first, you all know, Dr. Dallas Toby Cosgrove, the visionary CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. I've been a trustee for years. In the last 2 years, now I've been put on the board itself. And I've been able to see Toby in action. And it's been very impressive. I got to tell you, it's been a real eye-opening experience, and I saw the inner workings of the clinic, and it's impressive. Like all surgeons, he is hard-charging. What sets him apart is his drive to innovate. And I'm not talking about medical innovation. I'm talking about organizational and cultural innovation, which is something new down on Carnegie Avenue. Early in his tenure as CEO, he challenged the system and incurred the wrath of many as he set aside the culture of secrecy that reigns in medicine. He called on every department at the clinic to establish benchmarks and then called on all parties to report on outcomes for patients against those benchmarks. Huge step forward. In fact, probably national leader in that respect today. Last month, I saw a great example of Toby's organizational model, how it makes it easier for doctors to collaborate and work together across specialties to get things done. With collaboration from across the clinic and the benefit of a massive repository of electronic medical records, they discovered that overweight, diabetic patients who had had bariatric surgery saw significant improvement or even remission of their diabetes. No one is saying cure yet, but this is what a cure for diabetes could look like, and few other places in the world could have made this breakthrough in this manner. Another passionate, think different leader is Lou Salsa, the head of the Lawrence School. Lawrence serves K-12 students with language-based learning differences. Thanks to Lou's leadership and a cadre of others that form a tremendous leadership team there, Lawrence may be the best example of an organizational transformation I have been involved with since entering the field 20 years ago. In my role as active board member, and some would say parent from hell, I've loved every minute of working with and learning from Lou and the team. I'm quite sure, however, that Lou may not say the same thing about me, especially the times I bring home my points with an intensity and a ferocity and a language colored by growing up 93rd Harvard and serving a tour in the United States Navy. Safe bet? Okay. He's shaking his head. Over the past years, I've watched Lou and his team foster a high-performance culture that is also nurturing. Students who in other school settings are labeled as disabled or broken are understood from a developmental perspective. They're educated with programs that use evidence-based practices. Lawrence School measures the effectiveness of these practices and is not afraid to call it like it is when intended results aren't met. At Lawrence, they refuse to drink their own Kool-Aid. Their dedication to transparency, honesty, and self-critique literally saved the life of this school. And now they're even positioned to influence more in this region and beyond. These are the kind of leaders we need to cultivate all over this country. Imagine the dramatic strides we could make to solve our most vexing social challenges if we collectively took a quantum leap forward in our willingness and ability to support leaders like these, build and nurture highly effective, high-performance, nonprofit, and public institutions. We would be a stronger nation. Each of us has a role to play, and I'd like to share with you some thoughts about how. First, if you're a funder, you need to provide more than program funding in the typical capacity building grant if you want your grantees to make the leap to high performance. Leaders need funders who are willing to make substantive multi-year investments to help them rethink their models and strengthen their management rigor. Be more effective. That approach is at the very core of what Venture Philanthropy Partners does. Funders also have to absolutely break this misplaced fixation on an arbitrary overhead figure of 10 or 15%. My friends, not all overhead is created equal. I have such a hard time, my language is actually at this point a little more colorful typically because it really gets to me, when we see matters of effectiveness, improved quality, lower cost, faster service, doing more for others, lumped in as a category called overhead. I'm confused because in my other life, we call this good management. If you do nothing else, please just ask the leaders you fund what they need to get their job done, and then help them get that resource to do it. Second, business leaders, funders, and board members have a huge role to play in providing strategic advice and counsel. Daryl Hammond is the founder of Kaboom, a great nonprofit that has helped build over 2,000 playgrounds in some of the toughest neighborhoods in America. And he is as blunt as can be. He will tell anyone that the Omidyar network, the philanthropic entity started by eBay's founder, was miserable to work with. But in the past year or two, Omidyar, in Daryl's words, has gone from worst to first. Why? Because now they're a true partner as a funder. They help generate ideas, but they go with him side by side and help make those ideas successful. There are so many smart, connected people here in this region, around the country, who could help nonprofit leaders give advice and help them navigate these very turbulent times we have ahead. This assumes, of course, that these leaders are courageous enough to open themselves up, to ask for this advice, and to use this advice in the course of their careers. Third, business leaders, board members, and funders can help nonprofit leaders find and develop the talent they need. At Venture Philanthropy Partners, our team plays a huge role in the sourcing of board and management talent for our grantees. Our team has found more than 100 executives who have joined the boards or taken senior positions with the nonprofits we work with. Many of you are well positioned to do the same thing here. But I'll also point out we simply cannot recruit ourselves to good leadership. There are firms like General Electric, IBM, American Express, and others who have for years invested very heavily in leadership development. And that's why so many of their senior executives go off and lead global 500 corporations all over the world. You see, that relentless focus on leadership development needs to be adapted to and inculcated in the public and social sectors of our nation. That is a way out of the problems we have today. One way business leaders can support that focus now is to provide fellowships for rising leaders we see to spend time in other organizations that are known for their high performance. And I'd like to share with you a story of a close colleague. And it's a great story. It's humorous, but it's real. And if you knew the person, it'd even be better for you. But I'm going to quote him. He says, I was a schoolmaster. I realized that while I was a pretty good teacher, I was an ignoramus when it came to organizing and running an organization. Fortunately, I had a trustee who called her brother, who was then the CEO of Cummins Diesel Engine in Indiana. She said to her brother, Irwin, we got to help this young man. His instincts are good. He wants to do right, but he does not know anything about running a school. Does this sound familiar? Flying to Indiana for intensive management training was a tipping point in my colleague's career. He went on to become the president of one of the largest and most respected foundations in the world. Fourth, all of us must speak out for more rational funding. This will mean taking on the very challenging task of pushing for public policies that pay for comprehensive outcomes and not simplistic targets and simply activities. We don't have a single dollar to waste on nonprofits that aren't doing what they claim to do in their glossy brochures. It is time to put up or shut up for the kids of this country. Pat Lawler from Youth Villages tells of a story of a funder in Tennessee going with him to meet a state commissioner. The funder, a prominent citizen and political donor, literally screamed at the commissioner when that public servant didn't seem receptive to learning of Youth Villages' remarkable results for the kids in that state. I'm not advocating for screaming at anybody yet. But I do believe that those with a big voice have a big opportunity to speak up on behalf of allocating funding that's based on merit, proven principles, and what works, and not on stirring stories, emotional ties, ideology, or blind loyalty. Finally, nonprofit leaders and their public sector counterparts have to summon the courage to seek high performance. There are so many reasons why not. Banish all those many excuses. Make it a matter of pride to take the leap if you're that executive. Forget your damn funders and what they want for a minute. This is your life. Do it for yourself. Do it for those you serve. It doesn't cost money to do what you do well. It's a mindset. It's an attitude. I believe you should strive to be the very best you can be, period. And you do that for you, your teams, and the kids and families you serve. And if you're a board member, I would say you should be there asking hard questions that move these leaders out of their comfort zones and then be there to help them get better. At South High, Coach Frank Dillon taught every one of his baseball players to be prepared for anything. And I got to tell you, it worked well because he led us to the Ohio State Championship in 1961. And we brought the flag back to Cleveland, and it was great. We loved it. Coach Dillon demanded that each of us live the play before it happens. My brother will appreciate this. Given that I could not hit a curve to save my life, I paid really close attention to whatever Coach Dillon said because I wanted to stay in my position in left field on this team. So before every pitch, I would see in my mind's eye the plays unfold. And I would be, if that batter was singling the right, I was running between second and third to back up that throw. And I would run through each scenario before that next pitch would be thrown. Why? I wanted to be ready when that bat hit that ball. Today, I'm practicing the same discipline of trying to see the play before it unfolds. I want to be ready. I want to try to be ready. We should all try to be ready. I'm seeing tectonic shifts in our society that are going to rock the foundations of the social sector, in the public sector as well. All you got to do is look around and listen and put the dots together. I'm seeing kids in my old neighborhood, in neighborhoods like ours all over this country, losing opportunity. I'm seeing middle-class families losing jobs and homes. I'm seeing a country with slippery rungs and frayed bootstraps. I'm also seeing what a difference courageous leaders can make when they become more intentional in defining their approaches, more rigorous in engaging their progress, and more willing to admit and learn from their mistakes, and more capable of quickly adapting and improving, all with an unrelenting focus and passion to improve the lives of others. We need to supercharge these leaders, help them live the play before it happens, support them, nudge them, reward them, enlist them to spread the gospel to their peers. Investing in good leaders and helping them become great ones is the single best investment we can make. It's the proven strategy for ensuring that our hard work will produce high performance in real, enduring opportunity for the children and families in this community and communities all over our country. Mom, I hope it did you proud. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we're listening to Mario Morino, Chair of Venture Philanthropy Partners and author of Leap of Reason. We will return to Mr. Marino in a moment for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We encourage you all to formulate your questions now. Please remember to keep them brief. We welcome all of you here and those listening to WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across the country. Our television broadcast partners are WVIZ, PBS IdeaStream. Television broadcasts of the City Club are made possible by Cleveland State University and PNC. Our live webcast is supported by the University of Akron. We welcome guests today at tables hosted by Baker Hostetler, Cleveland Social Venture Partners, Esperanza Inc., Friends of Joe Simperman, Grants Plus, Lawrence School, Legal Aid Society, Marino Friends and Family, Neighborhood Progress Inc., Notre Dame College, St. Joseph Academy, St. Luke's Foundation of Cleveland, and Sisters of Charity Health System. Today's forum is the Herbert and Nettie Borstein Endowed Forum, made possible by a generous gift from the longtime City Club members Herbert and Nettie Borstein. We would also like to welcome students to our program. Today's students are all winners of the Hope and Stanley Adelstein Free Speech Essay Contest and are here as part of the City Club student program made possible by the Charles Spar Charitable Trust. Will the students please stand to be recognized? Now, we would like to return to Mr. Marino for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everybody, including guests. Holding the microphones today, we have City Club 100th Anniversary Assistant Director Betsy Wallace over there, and Program Director Carrie Miller in that corner. First question, please.
Over here, Mr. Marino.
Sorry.
I'm in the corner, but no dunce hat.
I'll wear that. Good.
You may have missed your calling. I think the South High team, if it were out there today, could find in you a pretty good coach. You have the right spirit that you bring to the task you've chosen. And I like the image that you've borrowed from your days on the baseball team of live the play before it happens. And I ask you to extend that metaphor to some of the social service organizations that you've taken an interest in. And I note that in baseball, you can live the play before it happens because it's a game with rules that we know how the rules are laid out. You can be predictive. But being predictive in the social sciences is very tough. Can you talk with us a little about how important you think it is to have models, to have predictive models, and to work the statistics so you can begin to really see where lives are headed and you can begin to live the play before it happens?
It's a very good question. It's a complex question, in all honesty, so I'll see if I can do it justice. I will say one thing, by the way. Baseball gets up pretty unpredictable, too, when the model breaks down. I agree with you. One of the things I've noticed is there's a lack of systems in the social sector. And that's not a criticism. I think it's a fact of life. And it makes the predictability you speak of very difficult, which brings you back to the issue of what I call high performance and the importance of information and process. When you're working with somebody today, having data that can tell you where you're at is hugely important. That could be about how your students are doing if you're a school. That could be the demographics of your funders. That could be where public policy changes may affect your funding coming in. It could be, if I'm in human services today, I'm going to be looking pretty hard at some of the work going on at the White House right now. There was just an article yesterday on the whole issue of social services, and they're judging these in fact, the Head Start program, there's a new bill coming out that will you'll have to now meet certain outcomes. Now, if I'm a Head Start person, that's pretty glaring to me. I should be getting my act together right now. So I think we can look ahead, and I think we do have to have process to do that. But we have to have information and rigor to do that as well.
Hi, Mario. Those of us in the nonprofit sector have been reading your book and doing a lot of saying amen, but I think our biggest hurdle is that most of us, if we're going to be honest, are funded through government sources. And the real challenge in those government sources is that there is little reward for positive outcome, but huge punishment if you don't follow all the compliance guidelines. And the further complication is as resources are getting more scarce, the compliance hurdles are getting greater. My question to you is, how do we create some kind of movement around that? Because that's taking more and more resources away from the kids we care about.
Susie, first of all, I agree with your whole supposition. I'd point you all to an article in the Washington Post yesterday called The Social Services Industrial Complex by Daniel Stid from Bridgespan, which talks to this exact issue. The problem is, I mean, you're with a great organization, much like Youth Villages. And you take these groups and you have great results and outcomes. How that gets communicated is critical, first of all. But you are facing a system that doesn't reward outcomes today. And I think what you're hearing Daniel lay out, what we're trying to say out, is that's what's got to change. And if you look at, although this is minuscule, if you look at the work of the Social Innovation Fund of the Obama administration, if you look at the work of the Office of Social Innovation, you look at the IEEE program in the Department of Education, it's trying to get the ship turned somewhat to look at effective outcomes, real outcomes, in terms of that reward process. It's nascent, and I think, candidly, we're going up against a huge wall of resistance. And the only way we're going to take it on is we've got to band together, and we've got to become a political voice, and we've got to let ourselves be heard.
Mario, I've been in and around the community development industry for 20 years. I'm convinced at the altar of Mario that you're correct when you talk about leadership development. Could you maybe just take a couple minutes and do a deeper dive on what you see in Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio area? We certainly have some leadership development mechanisms and triggers, also maybe best practices around the country around kind of really out-of-the-box leadership development for the nonprofit and social service sectors.
I have to beg, Paul, again, excellent point as always. I have to beg off because I got to tell you, my knowledge of the Cleveland infrastructure is still, from my definition, relatively weak. I could speak a lot more to the D.C. area. And I'll use D.C. as a metaphor here, and I'll get in a lot of trouble now. I'm not impressed by most leadership development programs. I think they're mid-level management training programs. They have nothing to do with leadership. That's the problem. We kid ourselves. I'll share with you an analogy for a second. I think this is so important, and it ties back to what I used in the book. I was having a friendly argument with a dear friend, James Foreman, who was the founder of the Maya Angelou Public Charter School. Wonderful executive, tremendous individual. We were talking about how they would train people in the organization and what courses to send to them. And I said, forget the courses. Hire good people they can learn from. We so missed that point. You can use courses then, but if you don't have the learning tree inside your organization, the outside education, in my view, is going to be worthless. And we said the same thing in corporate world. You need to have the training process inherently built in, not as fundamental training, but by doing with people who are better than you and learn better from you. I purposely advise any individual taking a job, the first thing they should be asking themselves is, who is the person I will be learning from in this new position? And we have to then structure our organizational thinking to do that more. And when we, for example, simply take the issue of succession planning, which is a bad word for a lot of people. It should be a constructive way of looking at, if I'm looking at a CEO role, do I have 5 potential candidates, and am I testing them with other positions? Or if I have a CFO role, do I come down and do I have other roles I can train them in? Even if I'm a small nonprofit, what do I do to develop my people? What opportunity do I give them to learn? We have to make that thinking a conscious part of nonprofit management. And I don't care how small you are. That applies to anybody. And I don't mean to escape the question, because there are good leadership programs. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think Ron's here, and I think the Cora program you guys have put in. I mean, that is a program that makes sense, because you're taking people and they're going through different phases of learning from different types of organizations. I think the very city leadership efforts are good. Leadership Cleveland, Leadership Washington. But I mean, they're good because they help you learn the terrain. I'm not so sure they're pure leadership development models, and I don't mean that critically. I mean, I'm calling it for what they are. They're good. So.
Mr. Marino, in talking to the City Club, you mentioned the future holds a vast exodus from the United States of jobs overseas. That's a rather draconian prediction. If that happens, the unemployment rate now, which is 8%, may even go higher. And what suggestions do you have, in view of the pending excess of jobs that you mentioned, to try to keep that unemployment rate lower?
Well, they said you were sharp, and they were right. That's a very hard question. I'll try to do justice to it, but I think people here like Barbara and Louis will do a much better job than I. Let me try and answer it in multiple parts, in all seriousness. I think there's global issues for the country to take on. We have got to invest money in research. It is one of the single biggest failings we've had over 40. This is not a new. Everybody thinks this innovation problem is new. This innovation and drain has been going for over 40 years in this nation. Louis could speak firsthand to this. The federal government money going to R&D has been on a steady decline. And where do you think we got all of our stuff from? Basic federal research. And sometimes we're a little too carried away with the entrepreneurial zeal and we take too much credit. Well, you know, a lot of stuff came out of DOD and CIA and Homeland Security that you use as regular products today. You don't even know it. So the drop in research is crucial. Turn it around. Broadband this nation at fiber levels, like South Korea. You'll change our model. Invest in it. Break through the telcos. Get it done. Number 2. Come up with different ways of educating everybody. We have to break through the institutional models. They simply cannot continue the current structure of cost for educational delivery. And we also have to reinvent our education to be in line with what a kid is going to face going forward. And there's good examples of progress, but this is still, in all honesty, if you step back and look at the field broadly, it's minuscule across all of our institutions. So I hit on research, I hit on broadband, I hit on education. And the third thing, I think we have to do something in this nation to go back and instill in every citizen, in every resident, the sense that it's important to do something. And you don't have to be in national service, you don't have to be part of the Boy Scouts, you don't have to be part of the PTA, but you, as a citizen, do something. When I grew up, if somebody built a garage, guess what? We were all down helping build that garage. It's corny. It's called the social compact of community. We got to heal our communities and rebuild that across their socioeconomic levels. Those would be my 4 points.
Mr. Marino, my question for you is, since young people and college students are broke and we can't exactly do much as funders, what role can we play in this eminent shift in the supply and demand of nonprofit funds and the subsequent pressure on public funding, besides writing essays?
All right. Well, again, yeah, very good question, and you're putting me on the spot. It's a hard one to answer, but it's a very good question. Let me give you some context from my limited understanding of your situation or kids coming out of college today. I've heard everything from draconian predictions. A very noted professor at USC believes that a vast percentage of kids going through college are fatalistic and disillusioned about the future. And I hear people saying the millennial group is probably the most enthused going forward in terms of social change of any we've seen. So you have this bar balancing act going on. What can you do? This is going to sound like heresy. Don't go start a nonprofit. We have such a zeal going on in this nation to push social entrepreneurship, to start new nonprofits, and I'm not saying that's wrong. But sooner or later, it breaks. I mean, what I would rather see is, instead of talking about social innovation for change, why aren't we talking about innovation for social change? That's a difference. It's an important difference. So when you go out, you bring a set of values. You're being educated and prepared to bring a set of values. It doesn't matter whether you're going into a corporation, a government agency, or a nonprofit. But you're bringing in a sense of a more holistic element of our life that's just not about money, but how we're going to exist, how we're going to breathe clean air, how we're going to have good water, how we're going to raise our kids properly. And you're able to balance the economic and social issues. If you can bring that culture into our world, it will be huge. The other things you can do short term is get involved yourself. Speak out. A friend of mine is a guy by the name of Daniel Ben Horn. I urge you, I'll try to get the link and send it to you. But Daniel, those who know TechSoup, it's the largest website for technology globally. Daniel visited a series of young people all over the world. He came back with a conclusion. He said, we expect them to turn to us for advice. This generation isn't there. They've seen what we've done to this world. They don't want our advice. They're going to go out and do it. So you go do it. For you.
Thank you, Mario. I've used your book a lot in working with boards of directors. Question. In so many cases, it seems like in nonprofits, we'll get the right people around the leadership table, but the results will be so dismal. Is there perhaps a new model of leadership we need to be creating in organizations, considering how the kind of underperformance we see in a lot of boards of directors?
Very good question. And again, I'll walk on the line of being sacrilegious. I'd say, number one, be honest. Start opening up. I'm amazed. I'll tell you this. I'll say this over and over again. I wrote 2 articles on this. There's a joke that says business people check their brains at the door on nonprofit boards. They actually do, by the way. I was one of them. I'll tell you myself I did it. You know what's worse, though? Too many of us check our courage at the door. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to tick off the executive director. We don't want to make this person uneasy. Meantime, guess who's suffering? The kids, the people we're serving. We never asked that question. And, you know, everybody treats it timidly, easy. Let's not make it too rough. Why not? We have lives on the line. Why not get really rough? Why not start putting these arguments on the table? And you don't have to be offensive. I used to be part of an investment firm. I described them, the firm is General Atlantic LLC. I always described them in life as an investment firm with ethics, a true oxymoron. And one of the things you'll see in the investment committee meetings is rigorous debate and discussion about an investment. But they use the phrase, they have soft elbows. You can have rigorous debate and difference of opinions if you have a respect for each other. And I think that's what you have to ensure, an openness, a respect, but a forceful dialogue. And something else we learned, if it doesn't hurt, you haven't gotten to the point of discussion yet.
Hi, I've noticed an irony when it comes to charities. It seems like the most efficient charities, the ones that are willing to sacrifice their marketing departments to do more good, tend to get the fewest donations because they sacrifice their departments. Meanwhile, those charities that have the highest overheads, because they're willing to do that, seem to get the most donations. So recently, I started a site which would, it's kind of yellow pages for charities called Care Cleveland. which would kind of do marketing for these small charities. So I'm curious, how can we use technology to help small charities that are doing so much good in our community?
Again, very good question. I actually have tracked your work. We've seen it. It's good. And we track other efforts like that. There's, Keystone Foundation, I think Lowell had the name of it, is they do this work trying to get the information of people around the nonprofit so it's fed into websites. You can see the performance. Your portrayal is probably a little off, but it's not really, in a generalistic sense, inaccurate. Okay, and oftentimes we give money to the best story as opposed to the best result. That's the part of the field that people just get really uncomfortable talking about. It's true. What you want to have is you want to have the compelling story with the compelling result. That's what you want to have. And what I think you have is again, and that we get all messed up with fundraising in marketing because we forget that there really is, in a crass way, there's a product, and if your product doesn't work first, then you got a bigger problem, and quit trying to spin it to everybody else. So maybe what you do is you force people to be more honest. You help the people who are getting good results get better known. But I would say one of the problems of looking outside in is you're always going to be victim to what you see because you don't know how it's functioning inside. And until we solve the problem of encouraging the nonprofit leadership themselves, and I think they're willing, they need support to do this, to begin to produce data on their performance on a regular basis, it will change that dynamic. And you could help with your communications in your site, in Care Cleveland.
Hi. With the importance of gathering data and being able to analyze results and outcomes becoming ever important, as you've mentioned, can you give advice to nonprofits that don't have the resources to be able to do that kind of data analysis in-house on how they can get some of that done? Sure.
The data analysis part is, I hate to say it, is the last step of the chain. And this is what people miss, I think, a lot. Just to give you a context, I used to put these systems into my corporate life. 30 years I put these systems in. And I'm giving you a long answer, but there was a rule we had, and we talked about the bell curve. And I could go in and within 1 hour know where this company was at. And typically you install the system, and the big 2 standard deviations, the inside ones, you know they were going to get some incremental benefit. And then, you know, on the right, the standard deviations on the right, the second, third way out here, those people are going to be like virtuosos. They're going to take what we did and do the most wonderful things in the world. And then there was this 2 standard deviations to the left. And you know what the information did? It allowed klutzes to make bad decisions faster. The information is irrelevant unless you have the judgment to apply it. And we forget that. So I would argue that even though you may not have the metrics, getting clarity of mission, this sounds corny, but getting clarity of mission is huge. Getting clarity of goals, defining your outcomes, taking the time to define your outcomes. This is a difficult process for a nonprofit. If you do it rigorously, it's a difficult process, but it's remarkably worthwhile. That alone will help everybody get realigned more effectively to where you're going. And if you don't have the money to get the kind of systems you need data-wise, it doesn't stop you from asking questions. There's an old phrase called management by walking around. It means you get out with the people you're serving, you talk to them, you listen to them, you get their input into your process. And you get at least anecdotal data. At some point in time, you'll grow enough that you can get that kind of resource. And then look for the people who are doing similar work to you that are larger, where there's been evidence-based practices established. And then learn if you apply the rigor that could get that evidence-based level of credibility for yourself. I don't think you have to be at the data level right away at all. I think it's really fundamental that you get the right people in place. They're in the right seats. You got clarity of mission. You got clarity of goals. You got clarity of what your outcomes are. And you know that your logic model, your theory of change, you've actually asked yourself, does it actually work? Are we actually helping these kids? We have cases where we've actually found out that the theory of change model was hurting the client.
My question is, as a leader of a nonprofit organization and representative of many, one problem that I've noticed is that we keep opening up. There's so many of us, and within the same category and subgroup, what is a technique that you could share? If you need to talk with me afterwards, that's fine, but what is a technique that you could share to help us to band together and so that there's more unity within us, within the same category and the same subgroup, so that we can do more?
I'm going to give you a very good question again, and I think you're hitting on a remarkably important issue. And I want to answer it in several parts, okay? First of all, I want to say something that all the rhetoric, and I've been part of this that you've heard over the past 15 years about scaling and performance improvement, is all good. But you know, when you're a nonprofit with one person in a budget of $200,000 maybe, a lot of that stuff really doesn't apply to you dead on. And I think one of the things we're doing is we're hurting a lot of people who are out there doing probably good work in their community. Even it might be like at a fabric vapor level, okay, but it's there. Let them keep that doing. Just let them do what they're doing. Because they're the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that probably are the spirit of America. And it doesn't mean they have formal groups, but I think it's really key that those people can function. Then start applying the harder rules up front. And I think, by the way, the impending cash crunch that's coming, it's going to sort it out.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we've been listening to Mario Morino, Chair of Venture Philanthropy Partners and author of Leap of Reason. Thank you, Mr. Marino. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.